Onion Cycles podcast is about thought provoking, emotion evoking, action driven, step by step guidance to explore the unique, glorious, and wonderful ocean of your being. Because healing is a multi layered process of getting to know oneself. Become the self empowered empiric researcher by discovering the unique layers of your existence. With your host, Nadine Alma, welcome to the Holistic Healing Hub. Welcome to the Onion Cycles podcast. Hello and welcome back, my beloved fellow healing onions. I am so happy you tuned in again, and this is exactly where we're going to start today. This episode, Story 21, episode 22, is called Joie de vie, or the joy of life. And as so often, the joy of life is defined through our happiness. And the word happiness is everywhere. Everyone is trying to be happy. When they grow up, they want to be happy. When they are grown up, they seek happiness. So we try and scratch the surface of this huge topic. And before we dive in, I want to just give you a few of my sources that I covered during the preparation for this story and episode. The first one is a book that I read, which was actually the inspiration to bring this to the awareness of you, my lovely, beloved fellow healing onions. And that is a book called The Happiness Project by Gretchen Rubin. I would highly recommend you check that book out. It surely is in your library, but you can probably get it as an audiobook as well. Then we have dailystoic.com, and there is an article, How to Be Happy, which was very inspiring as well. And then obviously I can't do an episode on happiness without Marcus Aurelius's meditations. We covered that in our episode about meditation, and also last week when we were talking about meditating on something and meditation as a practice. So these are my main inspirations behind this podcast episode. And because it's such a big topic, the first thing I think anyone needs to do to clarify from which point of view they approach that topic, because I am not going into any scientific studies here. I'm merely trying to put together a very concise episode so you can form your own opinion and start implementing in your life a self-empiric research on what makes you happy, what happiness means to you, and how does it look. Joy of life, joie de vie. Why this topic? Because, my beloveds, we're almost halfway through our year, and I thought what better to do to celebrate this approaching half term than diving straight into the essence of why anyone ever starts self-development, self-growth, and the wish to create their own reality and form their own character and break free from anything and everything that holds them back, which is that image of an restful, centered being smiling to themselves while in the back their house burns down, because they're not attached anymore and they find their own balance and their own wholeness within themselves. So, what is happiness? What is joy of life? What is joie de vie? Joie de vie is basically defined by Google search as an exaltation of spirit. and it is mainly made up of happiness. And happiness, what is that? I believe that you can get a bunch of people and all of them would say a bunch of different words, because happiness, as every single topic we covered so far, is individual. It is so highly personal. It is a very intimate thing too. And it is something that doesn't come naturally to all of us. I feel like, especially if you have been traumatized, if you have been masking, if you haven't even found out who you are yet, or who you want to be, or what you want your life to look like, I believe for those people, and I include myself in that group, is it's hard to even answer what happiness does mean to us, because we all think it comes as easy as love. And we already discovered during 1 month dedicated to the art of love that love indeed isn't as easy and just there. It is very conditional these days, and we have to uncondition and unravel and unshed all that we think about it and approach it from the view of learning an art form. And I feel like happiness falls in that same category, albeit that it might be a side effect of going straight for learning the art of love. Mainly, people would say happiness is vitalism, is health, optimism, creativity, even self confidence. But I would argue that is much more complicated than just a definition of another word for it. Because it's so individual, though, please only take away from this episode what resonates with you. Like I said, it's an individual path, and I want to start off as well by mentioning to those of you who are new here that every episode is designed to self actualization, meaning looking at it from the perspective of as I think, so I feel, so I act. Therefore, listening to an episode is absolutely lovely, and I'm very grateful that you tune in every week. However, if you really want to change, you have to give those grassroots and those seeds some water and some sun, meaning you need to get in action. You need to be reactionary to what is discussed. And to make it a little bit easier, with every episode comes a worksheet that is free to download on my website, www.wantofind.org. And on this worksheet, you will find everything we talked about in the episode, as well as some exercises. And those exercises should help, should be of service, and should support you in broaching the topic and diving deeper into the topic of the week. So, with that said, let's go back to happiness. I feel like first we probably need to talk a couple of minutes about the Maslow pyramid. So we are going to go a little bit into psychology as well. The Maslow pyramid basically describes 5 stages, and in these 5 stages, they sort of point out that you have to have some needs met before you're able to dive into the next step of the pyramid. So it starts with physiological needs, which is breathing, food, water, shelter, clothing, and sleep. If you don't have those physiological needs met, then you're not able to advance on this pyramid to the next point, which is safety and security. Safety and security is health, employment, occupation, property, family, and social ability. So if you're not even able to breathe or have food or have water, shelter, it is very minimal the chance that you're even able to care about property or employment and take care of your health, right? So the next step would be, after the physiological needs and the safety and security, if those needs are met, which are the basic needs, then you come to the psychological needs, which are defined as love and belonging, friendship, family, intimacy, and a sense of connection, and self esteem, which is confidence, achievement, respect of others, and the need to be a unique individual. So, to recount, if you haven't had your basic needs met, there is a limited chance that you are able to even consider the psychological needs or reach the psychological needs, because you have so much to take care of first. It's right. If you don't have money to buy food and you're starving, or your children are starving, or your animals and pets are starving, you don't really have the resources or the energy to think about something like self esteem, right? And the last one, which is the self fulfillment needs, is called self actualization. And that is where we find morality, creativity, spontaneity, acceptance, experience, purpose, meaning, and inner potential. The reason I wanted to mention this is because not everyone is interested in self actualization or self growth, right? So, therefore, not many people even ask themselves what makes them happy, or they say preconditioned things like, oh, my family makes me happy, without thinking twice if that family construct and the family system they are in actually is toxic or not, and holds them back or not, or supports them to reach their dreams and reach their full potential. With the Maslow pyramid in the back of our mind, I want to give you a second metaphor that personally I found very valuable on my own journey to find out and define what happiness means to me. That is a pendulum. So, if a pendulum is in balance and in the center, it is still, it is quiet, it isn't really moving. Whereas if you're high on life, or if you're low and despair or sorrowful, then you either swing left or right. So, with this metaphor in mind, I realized that the highs I was seeking in life and the lows I was experiencing afterwards are just very self explanatory and very logical, as a sort of order that needs to happen. When you're very high and then you come back down and you feel very lost, then that's the total opposite of the spectrum. If you want, it's like the total left and then the total right and then back again. So the pendulum swings to the left and to the right, and you don't feel centered or balanced at all. So if you have that metaphor in your mind, you can begin to ask yourself the question, what is your middle ground? Is the meaning of life to experience it to the fullest? And if so, what is the fullest? What does experiencing it to the fullest mean to you? Or is it at the moment swinging left and right and going from a high direct to a low? Then how can you find that balance, and what does balance you to come to the middle, to come to the middle ground, to come to contentment? With those two metaphors, the pyramid of Maslow and the pendulum, let's dive into what Stoicism has to say about happiness, because Stoicism has a very lovely word for the state of being happy, which is eudaimonia. And I hope I pronounced that correctly. They call it eudaimonia, and that is an internal state of being achieved through composed reactions and contentment in the present moment. That is a lot to unpack, I know, but there is a lot of wisdom in there. And that's why I decided to go for that approach. Because, first of all, what this definition eudaimonia represents is that it is an internal state, but it is a direction and not a destination. So many of us do say that, oh, I will be happy when this happens. I will be happy when I get that new job. Oh, I will be happy when I get that girlfriend. I will be happy when I get a child. I will be happy when I have that pet. I will be happy when I have that handbag or that car or that amount of money in the bank. And that is an error, a mistake to think that only after something happens in the external will we achieve happiness, because as the Stoic taught us, it is an internal state. The next thing that is in that statement is that an internal state of being achieved through composed reactions and contentment in the present moment. There is through composed reactions. And most people do think that Stoicism is rather rigid, and when we say, oh, that is a Stoic point of view, we mostly mean that there is no emotion, no feeling behind it, as though they just have a switch and they just turn it off just like that. But that's actually not true. I was talking about Marcus Aurelius and how back in his time people probably thought he was rather dire because he didn't indulge in parties, he didn't indulge in too much food. He always was questioning himself and his choices, and was the whole book Meditations is an example of how he not egotistically but very thoroughly questioned himself and what his motivators were, what his drive was to do something, to have a decision come out of him. And I feel like that the overall feeling from reading it is that of a person who has a very wide spectrum of feelings. It isn't not having feelings, it isn't not feeling them. It is a, as the definition says, composed reaction. So that means you don't react like a toddler in the moment that you don't get something, you throw yourself on the floor and start screaming. But you first of all think about, well, why does that trigger me? And I feel like that has a lot to do with accountability and responsibility, because in the moment of throwing yourself to the floor, you react as though the external world is responsible to give you something because you're entitled to it. And from the point of a toddler, that's perfectly fine because he's just learning its boundaries and the world and the ways of the world. But we, as young adults or adults, we are perfectly capable to think about why something triggers us and why the emotion emerges, and where does it emerge from? Where does it come from? The depths of our own psyche, the depths of our subconscious, and everything that is enclosed within us is also the key to understanding why we react the way we react. And in doing so, we get a good picture of where we stand, who we are, and what we really want to be, who we want to be. So, by practicing Stoicism, it's not an absence of feelings, it's rather about taking power over all that's inside your control, like your attitudes, your words, your desires, your opinions, and your happiness. And the last wisdom that is in that definition of eudaimonia is that it is a contentment in the present moment. That is so beautiful, isn't it? Because it assures us and affirms us what most of us already know, that we are most happy and free and content in the now, when we don't think about the past. Oh, what could we have said? What could we have done differently? When we don't think about possibilities and options in the future and sort of lose ourselves in how to do, what to make the decision about, to should I stay or should I go, all of that. We are in the now, we are just taking it in, and that plays into the idea of making routines, rituals, and being very aware and very mindful and very content in what we are doing right now and what we decided to do right now, and stay there in this thing called present, in ordinary things made special, in ordinary people made special by us, in awareness, mindfulness, and relishing and savoring those moments that so often we chase away for the future or chase away for happiness itself. And then we also have something that is, I feel like, very important to look at when it comes to happiness, and that is enjoyment follows virtue, because Stoicism is sort of about virtue a lot. Happiness in Stoicism also is the pursuit of virtue. It is a fine line, but I believe that if you do good to feel good, then what you send out is goodness. And even if it is a selfish reason that you feel good by helping those animals get a walk once a week, helping in the animal shelter to clean because they're short staffed and underfunded, why is it bad to feel good? I feel like there's a whole different conversation we would have to lead when we look at that. What is society telling us? That it's not good to feel good. So if you do something because it makes you feel good, no matter if it is good work and if it is needed work and if it is a good thing to do, as soon as it makes you feel good, you're not good anymore. You're not a good person because it makes you feel good. I think that is a paradigm that is really nonsense. And therefore, if virtue means do good to feel good, then being of service is actually something more people would do, because they would agree that, oh, well, that's lovely, because as soon as I feel good helping someone else, I want to do more of that. And there is scientific research done, but please do the research on where you get that information yourselves as well. But there is scientific evidence out there that it makes us humans actually more happy to help someone else and support someone else and see someone else happy. So there is something to dive into and do some research on if you're interested with that and if it resonates with you. And with all of that discussed, I want to dive into 8 things that might be worth your while trying out to increase your, as the Stoic would say, eudaimonia, your internal state of being achieved through composed reactions and contentment in the present moment. We start off with focus on what you can control. You can control your home, your environment, meaning you can control if there is clutter around, how it looks, how you feel in it, and if you want to bring some order to it. If you want to start on your own home, in your closet, in your bathroom, in your kitchen, or wherever the mess is, and see if you can bring order to it. And there is also, like, what you can control is also where and how you spend your energy on, who you spend your energy on, the people that are around you. Remember, the top 5 people you spend the most time with are the ones that shape your reality, are the ones that influence you the most. You can also focus on daily habits, healthy or unhealthy. You can focus on how you create and curate your social media, your For You page. What are you feeding yourself and your brain every single day that desires, the wishes, the things you want to live up to? What is it that you put into yourself that curates your whole day? And this is something you can control. So make it your own. Make it so that your For You page reflects where you want to end up, who you want to be, what you want your life to look like, and if it makes you feel good or if it doesn't make you feel good. Does it motivate you or demotivate you? And you also have in your control to not be passive. If you crave a book club and there is no book club in your community, then be active. Send an email around, put up posters, get your email out there, and try and create that book club of your dream. And whatever your hobby is that you want to share with others, there is a way. I promise you, you will find the way. Because just because no one has done it doesn't mean that it is impossible. It just means no one has done it so far. And you might have a boost in your happiness when you focus on what you can control, stop thinking about it, and start doing it. The second thing is virtue again. Have you ever tried being a volunteer? Have you ever tried something that is important to you where you know you could be of service to people or animals or the environment? And just bring your skill, your talent to it and do something that is in support of something that is important to you. Third, take a walk. It basically does nothing else but nourish body and mind. It reduces stress and anxiety because it releases endorphins and it reorganizes your brain. It increases creative, divergent thinking. And I personally make it a habit that if I don't feel good, then I go out and I don't come back until I feel a little bit of release from that negative feeling, from that stuckness. And most of the times, if we sit in a chair all day, the energy just does get stuck. And in order to make it move again, movement and motion is the key. Then also do less and don't feel bad about it. Goodness sake, our society is a hustle culture. We know that. And we have grown up with that feeling that we're just worthy if we do something. And of course, there might be some benefits from doing your garden because you want to do it, but not because it is a chore on your list. There might be a benefit on sitting down with your children without a phone, without TV, after cooking, before cooking, and really spending time with them. When I say do less, I don't mean to sit in front of the TV on the couch and watch Netflix, unless this is what you want to do, of course. I mean, take your time to be present and do less in the present. That might look like something you haven't done since being a teenager. Lying on the floor and listening to your favorite music, or doing some arts and crafts again. I don't know what floats your boat. That is your job to rediscover and immerse yourself. Give yourself that time to do less. Gratitude practice. We covered this in episode 2, I know, but by now it might even be a lifestyle and not just a practice anymore. When I say a lifestyle, I just mean that gratitude at some point becomes something that is autonomous within us. It's just a basic feeling of how we feel. It is the way we greet the one at the front desk when we check in somewhere. It is when we check out at the register and how we treat people around us. if you have integrated gratitude in your heart, then gratitude sometimes and on some days is even the only thing of getting yourself out of a rut and back into the present moment. If you also connect with others, that might be through gratitude, but it can just also be through not living the life of a hermit. And I myself have a good time being alone. I like being alone, but I also had a hard time acknowledging that it might just be a trauma response. Because the more and the better we feel alone and are alone, the more we detach from other people, we seclude ourselves from other people, and inherently, we humans are group and social beings. So, find out for yourself if you're avoiding people or if it is what you need right at this moment. But at some point, there might come a time when you feel comfortable in reaching out and deepening your relationships, deepening your friendships, and come to the conclusion that there are your people out there, your tribe is out there, and you can actually be yourself. Maybe even be reflected and mirrored by others for your own highest good and theirs. You also could laugh more. This is something I want to combine with exercise, because both exercise and laughing release endorphins within us. It plays into the third point I made about taking a walk, because that releases endorphins too. Find out what brings you joy. I, for one, am not happy when I run, but I am definitely content and happy when I do my yoga and breathing exercises and qigong. So find out what exercise you could do daily for just 10 to 20 minutes and do that and see if it increases your levels of contentment and happiness. And laughing more, if I do a balancing exercise in yoga and I fall on my butt, instead of being unhappy with myself and dissatisfied with what I brought to the table today, I taught myself to laugh. And please don't laugh at me now. I know it sounds very strange to hear that someone taught themselves to laugh at themselves, but I did, because I was very unhappy for a very long time. So I needed to find some lightness in my heart and in my life. And I did that by, whenever I did something clumsy or something happened to me and nobody was around, I usually would be very unhappy with myself and felt like a fool. But then I thought, wouldn't it be nice to use this and look at it from a comedic point of view, like a third person? And I believe a third person would look at this and could be laughing out loud to see how I felt, because I didn't hurt myself. It might have just looked very funny. And that is my last sort of recommendation. If you feel like you need to laugh more in your life, laugh at yourself when you're clumsy and make that a habit. And I believe that is a lot that is defined as being within your control and being in your possibilities and options to do in order to gain more contentment. I do sincerely hope that this episode brought you some joie de vie, and I would love to read some of your comments if you tried some of the recommendations out, if the information containing this episode was of help to you, or if the sources that I gave you in the very beginning was something that supported you on the journey, on the path to finding more happiness. And if you feel very brave and courageous, I do repeat myself, sometimes other people need to hear something, and you might be the one to tell it, and they won't feel alone going through it. So, if you have something to share about the possible exercises to try out, about the content we covered today, or about the sources or your own journey to happiness, please do. I would love to read from you and hear from you. And that is all for today. I hope this was of service to you. I open my heart wide and I send you all the love in the world. I hope you tune in next week again. And until then, I send you from my heart to yours all the joy in the world, my beloved fellow healing onions.